interesting story. The Labour MP, Charlotte Nichols, has hit the headlines for saying dead people should be able to change their gender. She's called for the law to be changed so transgender people can have their gender changed after they've died in official records. There's a lot to this story than you initially think on the surface. So my lovely panel are still with me. That's Scarlett Maguire and David Curzon. Coming to you first on this one, David. I'm sorry, initially it sounds a bit bonkers.
It does sound bonkers. It is bonkers. It's absolutely crazy. I mean, you know, if your people are born male or female, you cannot change your biological sex. So for someone to suggest that after you die, you can actually be reassigned a different gender to your biological sex after you die is absolutely balmy. Look, we have people who are archaeologists. They're digging up people from ancient times, and you see their pelvic bones, their skeleton will tell you immediately if someone is male or female. I mean, this is what happens after you die. This is what happens to you, sadly, and there's no getting away from it.
This is the Labour MP Charlotte Nichols and Warrington North who has suggested this. I mean, doesn't it, if we allow this to happen, is it normalising self-ID in the NHS, and doesn't it skew all sorts of medical statistics and...
Yeah, I mean, so...
how we treat various things. I mean, there's one incident of a trans child who'd taken their own life, and we know male suicide is a big thing, but that was then going down as a female. It's a confusing issue.
Yes, so the reason she did it was because of the terrible case of Brianna Ghey, who was killed, and because she's underage, she will be buried as a man, as a male, rather than as a female, whereas her family, I mean, everybody, even GB News, talks about her as her and recognises that she had transitioned. So I think that's... I mean, while I agree with David that you know, your pelvic bones and everything, you know, will always be male for her. Actually, it's about official records, and it's about I mean, my view about Brianna is actually we should be talking about the way we talk, not you at all, about transgender people and recognising, I mean, because it was a hate crime, right? And actually, that's the most important thing about her death, is that one of the main reasons she was killed by the young man was because she was transgender. So actually, it's about that. But it is, I mean, it's about being respectful, but it's not about saying, look, you know, that person's been dead 10 years and I think really they were a male or a female. It's about respecting what people are, and I think that's fine.
OK, so, David, coming back to you then on this one, Sir Liam Fox, the MP for North Somerset, who formerly works as a medical doctor, he says it's patently absurd, factually inaccurate and a statistical distortion. We should not be encouraging the idea that people can simply choose to change their biological status. So would it be... I mean, if we're thinking about Brianna, I mean, you know, as Scarlett said, it was just horrific. One of the reasons she was murdered, certainly by the male concerned in this, was because she was transgender. Would it make sense then to identify her as transgender woman rather than a woman?
Well, everyone is calling her a woman, a girl.
But in the stats, in the official stats.
In the official stats, well, you go by the biological sex. So obviously she is still, well, I use the word she here because this is what everyone's doing. I would normally say he, but obviously you don't want to say that because this is a horrible thing that's happened to an individual person. This is a horrible crime and all of this. So, you know, this is a very delicate situation. But in official statistics, Brianna, as she's called, is a biological male. So in statistics, in how the NHS should deal with her posthumously should be as a male. And this would be, if you change this in the Gender Recognition Act, this will be another step to normalising transgenderism. And I worry here that this horrible situation is now being weaponised in order to advance the transgender agenda and to normalise things. Yeah. If I just... One thing you did mention, which is very interesting, is about suicides in transgender people, but the suicide rate doesn't change after transition. It stays the same. It's usually underlying issues which are the issue, not people's gender.
So, I mean, this has been slammed by those who are opposing this as, you know, a backdoor to more transgender ID in the NHS service. So, Scarlett, I mean, does this end up with sort of like, you know, babies sort of like, you know, not being given a sex at birth? I mean, does it go as far as that?
No. I mean, it is quite clear that you look at a baby boy or a baby girl and they have a sex and they have a biological sex. What we're talking about is we're talking about a tiny minority of people.
Yes.
Right? It's really, really important. A tiny minority of people who find themselves very, very unhappy and they identify with the other sex. And actually, there's always been a spectrum. I mean, you know, I was a tomboy when young. Absolutely, and I actually thought, well, you know, now that we've got feminine and everything, but my daughter was too, and my son used to say, you know, when I grow up and I'm a girl, I mean, it's fine. But so they were on part of the, but when you have somebody who really, really identifies with another gender, I just think it's and then they die, right? And that's what we're talking about, whether it's suicide or whatever. I just think it's respectful that you bury them as their gender. And I think this thing about normalisation, it is a tiny, tiny minority of people, and they are very, very repressed. And what the way they are treated by society is often pretty awful.
It's a fascinating debate and very curious to see which side you come down on in this one. Or do you see both points of view? GB Views at GB News. Get your opinions coming in, because this is all about what you think.